Hey, Clyde, welcome to BDE. Yes, I'm back, and I know y'all missed me. I missed you two horribly.
Seriously, Chuck.
Well, certainly missed you, although it was nice to have an Aggie majority for a little while.
One of my favorite Aggie jokes of all time is University lands, the Aggies own a third of it, and the University of Texas owns two-thirds of it. What does that prove about the Aggies? They chose
They got first choice.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's good.
So I guess we're going to have Wintergeddon or whatever we want to call it this weekend. I think it's
Uri
supposed to hit
2.
Uri 2 Sunday, I think.
And we're going to attach at least the somewhat current version of the NOAA CPC 6 to 10 day outlook, and it shows light blue to deep blue across 2/3 or half of the lower 48. And I'll just remind people that the deeper the blue doesn't mean the colder it's going to be. Those are probability contours.
No, Mark,
relative to normal.
I believe it's cold. The cold. It just feels cold.
Unless you're reading it in Davos.
What a joke. I mean, let's talk about Davos.
Then colors mean everything.
Davos is the biggest boondoggle I've ever seen in my life. Like, if you're a CEO, a credible CEO, why are you going to Davos? Because your PR team wants a boondoggle? Because that's exactly what it is.
Of course.
It's the Alps,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the Swiss Alps. Do you get skiing in this time of year? Is that what happens too?
I actually play golf with a young Swissman who is a college golfer, former college golfer, and it's hilarious. Switzerland's neutral, but Trump's making it hard on the Swiss to immigrate here to the U.S. So it's kind of funny.
Well, let's finish the. It's going to be fun to watch network weather this weekend. It is breathless in its delivery, and it's somewhat reminiscent of when you had a wave form in the Gulf, and Dr. Neil Frank, rest in peace. Dr. Frank recently passed away, and it was good dramatic TV. So we're going to see a lot of that this weekend. But if you look at what has happened in natural gas prices over the last 5 days, we're now, last I looked this morning, we're trading Henry Hub at 556.
560, man.
That's up over 75% in the last 5 days. Yet Waha, it may be up a lot, but it's struggling to break a buck. And February Waha is priced around -3 and change currently. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch, particularly what happens with ERCOT and PJM, just given all their recent travails.
I mean, why don't we buy a bunch of storage tanks near Waha off the grid, off the pipeline, and just store it until, or actually, we probably need an underground cavern to do that. But I mean, what a moneymaker!
Yeah, I don't know that we have a lot of salt caverns out there that we can hollow out.
I mean, I'll take your gas for -3. You pay me $3 to take it, and then when it's up, I'll sell it. Come on. It's a great business idea.
The interesting part about I'm looking at this, the front month over the last month is up, almost 40% for Henry Hub. The 12-month strip's up 14%, but you even go to the 60-month strip, it's up almost 4%. So this has got a little more in the way of legs than just a cold snap. Although, if you look at the 6-month change, the 60-month strip is down 3% still. So
AI data centers, baby.
But remember, I'm just like, we're in a new. This is stuff we've been talking about. Why do we have Henry Hub trading at crazy high prices when Waha is going negative? I mean, this is an infrastructure failure, pure and simple, because we can't build a pipeline in this country to save our lives. But you would think with this sort of pro-business administration that would have there's some of those issues would have been solved, but they're not. Any take on that, Chuck and Mark?
Well, and how much of it's actually feds versus just the state of Texas? I
Good
mean,
question.
the state of Texas doesn't have a problem with you building a pipeline through somebody's backyard if need be. I wonder, just flat out economics, is how much does it cost to build a pipeline from Houlihan's down to the Gulf Coast, and the economics must not justify it, because I don't think this is a Fed problem.
No, the long haul from the Permian to the Gulf Coast is not a Fed problem. It is, I believe, and we've seen a number of new pipes come online in the last 8 to 10 years as the reality of very wet gas and increasing GORs means you got to do that. You got to do something with the gas and the NGLs to be able to produce the oil. And so it's coming whether you want it to or not. That's just the physical reality of Permian production. And we've talked about it before. You've seen a rise in gas oil ratio from slightly north of 3,000 back in 2017, I believe, is the baseline I think of. And it's over 4,000 today. So for every 500,000 barrels a day of oil production you bring on the Permian, you're bringing on 2 BCF a day. And that's about a new pipe. Not to mention the cryogenic processing and all the things you need to do to deal with the NGLs. So I've seen it in conventional. I saw it at Prudhoe. We were ultimately rate limited on the amount of gas that we could handle and move.
It's more interesting to me the friction in the system, that a bunch of Bitcoin miners in trailers aren't out there running off the natural gas. But I know the conversion from natural gas to actual electrons is not as simple as the finance pro here tries to make it.
Yep. So be watching my ERCOT dashboard this weekend for sure. Safely away from ERCOT.
Is there a handle we can follow, Mark, that are going to be live updates of ERCOT meltdown?
No, ERCOT has kind of all kinds of real-time data on its dashboard.
I was just hoping you'd have a comedic X handle to. I'm just watching those natural gas compressors that are going to go down and turn someone into a hero or a zero. All these traders are getting excited. Be interesting to watch. So, is it going to be so cold the compressor shut down, or did they fix the problem last time?
Serious tribute to the hands that are out there working in this, keeping the gas flowing.
Speaking of the serious hands, I was hitting balls last night next to these two old guys who are turns out to be oil and gas guys out of Dallas. And it's so fun to be up here in Dallas, boys, because in Houston, it's so global in perspective. You run into an oil and gas person who's like, oh yeah, I spent all my time focused on the North Sea. But up here in Dallas, man, it is, Midland country. It is West Texas O&G. It kind of feels kind of cool. I feel like I'm more in landman kind of territory. I even had lunch at Dallas Country Club, and man, I can't believe I didn't get run out of there, but I did hide wearing nice clothes and keeping my mouth shut. So
I don't know if it's a secret, so I won't say the company name, although I don't think it's anything great secret. But I was in a meeting, sitting in a conference room in Fort Worth, looking around, and the CEO goes, "You're getting this, aren't you?" And I go, "This was the conference room from Landman, wasn't it?" And he laughed and he said, "Yeah, they were up here and they shot." And so anyway, that was kind of cool.
Is that where Monty went off on all his compatriots?
No, this was the lawyers, where she walked in and threatened the insurance company lawyers. So it was that conference room.
So That's amazing, Chuck. I
It was
I
fun.
have this cool office that I do my work out of, and I turn on Bloomberg in the mornings. And it's kind of fun because I see updates and so forth. But Trump came on and he almost looked like he was filibustering. So I turned on the sound, which I rarely do. And I'm moving us to Davos now. And he just started going off.
Very eloquently,
He
I
started
might
going
add.
off on Greenland. Thank you, Chuck. Greenland. And I'm like, this is a joke. Like the Davos is a joke. But I was watching the guy that was eventually going to interview him, and I could just see like he had to draw the short straw, or maybe he's the excited one. He's like, I want to interview Trump. But it was hilarious to hear Trump try to haggle his way into convincing anyone that we should take over Greenland, which I'm all in favor of. I think we should take over Canada. So, in fact, Canada basically is America. Throw us up on what's happening in Davos, Mark.
Yeah, I actually caught Trump had a 1-year accomplishments press conference. I don't know if you guys caught any of that at the White House on Tuesday, and it started off with just the worst of the worst, and it was he must have spent at least 20 minutes of the hour of his ramble just showing the pictures of the criminals that they've apprehended in Minnesota. And then there's the big book of accomplishments, and it meanders into the Q&A about an hour into it. And one reporter asked him on Greenland, kind of what's the play there? And the implication is, even as far as military force, and Trump's very quick response was, "You'll find out." And this was immediately before he's on stage. It seems like he teleports all over the place because it wasn't that. And by the way, the trip to Davos started with a U-turn by Air Force One because they had a minor electrical problem, and they then had to pick up another kind of standby jet and fly over in something less than a 747. I don't know exactly what that plane was. But anyway, tuned into his speech at Davos yesterday. Of course, Greenland was dominant, but he covered the whole gamut. We've attached a New York Times piece. I haven't read the whole thing, but how many people in the audience and how many countries and how many leaders did he offend with his comments?
I mean, what about stupid people buy windmills? I laughed. I laughed out loud on that one. And he's not wrong per se. I mean, he really isn't.
He talked about China playing the game of, yes, they're happy to sell these. They make all of them, of course. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And they sell them to all these stupid people. He said, Europe, you're ruining your landscapes, your countryside with these, calls them windmills. And, it's just after a little bit of a detour in immigration, we won't get into that, taking them to task about what's happened. But, it was kind of a dog's breakfast of things that he rambled about. And then it really became pretty Greenland-centric. And over the course of the day before he left, there were questions asked and comments made, and apparently he had met with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, I believe is his name. And the outcome was, we have the concept of a framework of an agreement on Denmark, and everybody gets everything they want. And he also took the added step of explicitly taking military action off the table. And so, whereas the markets kind of tanked at the close on Tuesday, there was a pretty strong rally yesterday.
What is the military action in Greenland? Showing up?
Yeah, you've seen some of the NATO countries scramble forces and moving them to Greenland.
Okay. Hold on here. Let's think about this for just a second. If Trump truly were contemplating military action against Denmark and Greenland over this, we literally 7 times in the last 10 weeks sold military arms to Denmark. We literally are going to go do military action against a country we just sent Hellfire missiles to? How fucking stupid are you? The press blowing this up as, oh my God, he's contemplating military stuff. Just go read the DoD website where it talks about the military sales to Denmark. Give me a freaking break. This is this is so ridiculous that they even went down this path. Pull your head out of the ass, mainstream media, and just do a little journalism. Sorry, I'm off my soapbox.
You made my point, because the obligatory, after they kind of set the mainstream media set the table, like there's this really, high threat of military and the tariffs and all of that. And of course it was all characterized in the aftermath as another taco by Trump. Trump always chickens out.
Yeah.
This is the art of the deal.
Well, and he wrote a book about it that I read back when I was in college. Ask for this, so you get this, and then agree to it.
The reality is we're not going to give up on securing the Arctic, of which Greenland is a major landmass. And, there are kind of economic considerations from a critical mineral standpoint that make a ton of sense. There's no way Denmark's going to be able to, or the rest of NATO ex the U.S. is going to be able to do what the United States can do. I mean, we fund 65% of NATO. And so...
But he's the first president to really start pushing back on that narrative, which is someone should, because why are we paying for it?
Look, the Russians and Chinese are building a bunch of icebreakers all of a sudden for a reason. And when you see those missile track maps, the vast majority of which cross Greenland on the way to the continental United States, it's kind of high time we do something about getting our international, from a Western Hemisphere standpoint, Security Act together. And are we going to buy Greenland? No, I don't believe we are. Are we going to have something that looks like a proxy and leveraged economic interests that are critical to our national security and well-being? I think we will. And so the trade-offs are, look, this is our payment for being the kind of 800-pound gorilla in the room as it relates to NATO in this region. So, but the whole mainstream media treatment of this, Bloomberg in particular, was classic in that, there's this huge kind of fiction of U.S. military invasion of Greenland that they took it and ran with it, and now, it's made to look as if, it's another taco. So the EU stared down the United States, and
one minute he's a bully, the next minute it's a taco. It's like, come on, guys, just admit it. You're going to throw a stone no matter what happens.
I mean, it sounds like a great movie. I mean, it's a great indie film, but it shades over what really is interesting. I mean, one of the things Trump did say is the UK is turning the North Sea which is a sovereign wealth printing press, into a museum of regret. And the Norwegians who are sitting next door are counting their $1 trillion stack. I mean, we both know. I mean, we know there's 2 giant oil and gas companies headquartered in London, and the North Sea is a joke compared to what the Norwegians are doing.
There's
and Trump
2?
called them out on it, but I think this whole Greenland crap overshadowed what it's really happening. And I'm not sure.
Wait, one of them's under 100 billion in market cap. Is it really a giant?
Good point. Should we buy them? I mean, let's go.
We kind of picked on BP last episode.
Well, and I think, I think another big point he made that I think is way underappreciated. I mean, our spend on military post World War II of $22 trillion is basically 2/3 of our national debt. And oh, by the way, it's more than all the rest of NATO has spent, And so I think I think there's a little bit of truth to the fact that I'd rather you just say thank you.
So, sticking with Davos, the great irony is China sent its vice premier, He Lifeng, who talked about it. I kind of heard the strains of "We Are the World" playing in my mind when I read this again Bloomberg piece, and it's really setting up to compare contrast the stark difference between now where the United States is positioned on climate and green, and China is now the noble purveyor of transition, and the United States is the evil climate denier, which was how Bloomberg characterized the contrast between China. And the message from China was work with Beijing and our green technology exporters in a unified way, and we can really do well by the planet and really attack this emissions problem. The cynic in me says, as they see this grift and this crusade slipping away, and there's a little sidebar story here too I picked up on this morning, they see a significant strategic leverage point by which they have aided and embedded the weakening of the West in their quixotic pursuit of all of this and the trillions that have been spent in the supply chain dependencies that we've developed over the last, since Paris especially. And so as that narrative is slipping in its power and believability, China stands the very real chance that they're going to lose a major kind of passive, subtle strategic weapon. How do you guys see it?
Well, Xi, who was too busy showing up to another opening of a coal plant in China, knows where his bread is buttered. So, speaking of, since we're talking about Trump so much, they're playing 4D chess while our climate czars are playing Candyland. They're selling. They don't care about carbon. They care about the contract. So the coal, which they have a lot of, is building all of the green energy, and they're selling everything. And China's been doing that since we were children. We're like, man, where did all this crap, this little trinket crap come from? China. They know what they're doing. They're just gonna sell the world to us, and we're buying it.
So apparently Larry Fink had a dinner last night, time zones, whatever, and Al Gore was in attendance. And the keynote speaker at the dinner was Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. And apparently there was a pretty embarrassing heckling episode by Al Gore of the Commerce Secretary. And I just had a moment where I flashed back to the Man Bear Pig South Park episode. Again, since losing to George W. Bush by hanging Chad, Al Gore's net worth has gone from maybe a handful of millions to over 300 million. And so the desperation is creeping in here to really the leaders and the beneficiaries of the grift. And so it turns into this kind of clown show. And in anything current administration, whether it's within our borders or on the world stage, there's going to be, a very vocal and demonstrative opposition. Newsom is another example of that in the kind of shenanigans and comments that he's made at Davos. I don't know if you saw what the Treasury Secretary said about
Sparkle Kendall. That's brilliant. Yeah. That's absolutely brilliant.
Anyway, so it feels like the last desperate gasps of really what the cabal that has been dominating Davos for the last decade or so, seeing cracks in that.
Real quick before we leave Al Gore, I do love Lutnick's line of who gave the former vice president a second glass of Chardonnay.
Yes.
Yes. So Bessa and Lutnick are winning the comeback wars on the hot takes there.
So one thing we didn't talk about last week was the Harold Hamm announcement that they're taking Bakken drilling activity to zero. And I coined the term stack baby stack. And I find it ironic in that, he was front and center, Harold Hamm was front and center at the Venezuela presser and very supportive and positive in his comments. He's also, as you both know, been a close political ally, industry political ally of the president, dating back to the first term. Kind of what does this say, though?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, if there's a 5 handle on oil, one, I don't know how, except for your best stuff, tier 1, it's even economic to drill, number 1. Number 2, Harold's taken Continental private, so he's shielded somewhat from public realities. But I even think in the public marketplace, if you came out and just said, hey, we're not going to drill because we just don't think the economics are robust enough, I think your stock price would actually go up. I think the markets have become that kind of educated and rational about oil and gas. And so, dare I say the adults have entered the room and the shale go revolution of the past is officially dead.
Yeah, and it's been about returns since 2014 and the OPEC surprise. The industry didn't really get it until 2020, but it really is about returns. So I'll ask you from a different set of decision criteria for private companies, Chuck. What's typical today in terms of the well level after-tax rate of return? What are we shooting for? That's a clear green light.
I don't know that I have a good answer on that. And quite frankly, I'm not sure private equity as a whole has a really good answer for that, because, if you thought about it back in the day, if you bought your acreage cheap enough, whatever your IRRs were on a D&C basis purely kind of equated to what you'd get on your equity. So if you're drilling 25% rate of return wells, assuming you bought your acreage cheap enough, you kind of made that on the equity when you factored in that at least a portion of your cap table would be cheap bank debt. You would factor into that. You get paid for some PUDs when you monetized, because 25% rate of return PUDs get monetized at 15%, kind of back in the day. I don't know that anybody truly has a good handle on that. And the way I hear that people are thinking about it these days is we're going to drill every well and we're going to turn it all to PDP and we're going to sell it at PDP PV12. And that's how we're kind of modeling our stuff out. So if you think of all the risk, the cost overruns all that sort of stuff stewing in, I think your bar's got to be a little higher on your drilling these days. You got to be thinking 30 and 35% type stuff, which is why it's really hard to do something today.
Yeah, it takes me back to the days, and this lasted for a good decade, where there was always a disconnect, and I'm speaking from a public company perspective. And I know you looked at those, those investor presentations as well, and all the discussions on conference calls, but routinely touting 50 to 100% rates of return at the well level. And somehow that always seemed to translate into corporate returns on capital employed of 36% or worse. And that persisted for quite a long time. That speaks to really kind of the friction in the corporate to direct operating structure and all those things. But it was a disconnect that persisted for quite a while with not much critical analysis.
Well, my simple take always on that with the public company is, if you truly are drilling 50% rate of return wells, how come at the end of the year you don't have more PDP PV10 than you did the previous year? So I think it was less about the kind of friction difference between 50% and corporate G&A and all that, and more just cherry picking the 50%. That was always the best well. That was not the average well.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, the dynamics, just going back to your point, though, regarding Hamm. I mean, Trump wants $40 oil to kill inflation, and he wants the economy to be to be strong. And Harold knows that you can't make money at $40. So, I mean, quitting the game helps improve the odds until prices change. So that to me all makes sense. But when you also look at in Kazakhstan, that big field that's 825,000 barrels a day, it's shut in right now due to a fire. It's been offline for 10 days. In the old days, crude would spike $5 or so, but today the market sort of just yawns. I mean, one of the things that we have continued to talk about, I mean, I remember 5, 6, 7 years ago, we talked about, shale being the swing mover. What does that say about where the markets are today compared to where they've been? Is the market broken? I mean, are signals crossed? I mean, I think there's signals that used to be important to traders, but I'm just wondering what are the signals today?
Yeah, Purcell and I talked about this last week and a little bit on the Venezuela special edition we did before that. And, there's a strong counter narrative to what OPEC is telling you about short to intermediate term outlook, and what the IEA is slowly walking back. Sorry, Chuck, I mentioned the IEA. I know that was supposed to be a banned term for this year.
I've said fuck now twice on BDE, and I was going to try to limit that to just once this year. So you're entitled.
And so cross-referencing production data like the 914 and what's happening with inventories in the very short term, although I glanced at the API numbers yesterday and they seem to indicate a pretty big build across the board. What Amine Nasser, who is the CEO of Aramco, was on record saying this morning, saying, look, global inventories are at, lows. They're below 5-year norms. He said, what you're counting on as a glut is largely floating storage on sanctioned tankers. And so where is the other readily available either inventory or productive capacity? And he said, we're currently at about 2.5% global spare capacity. We need 3%. I had an exchange with Dave this morning. I said, if Aramco, if Nasser is saying it's 2.5, it's probably less than that. And so there's this huge kind of interference being run by the narrative and the amount of floating storage. In my opinion, I don't think anyone believes that 13.8 million barrels a day of U.S. oil production, as reported, in kind of this bow wave of second half growth, as you maintain completions and maybe you got better performance out of those completions, that just given the sheer reduction in activity over multiple months, that it's not going to somehow manifest in, a plateau in the key driver of this, which is the Permian. Never mind the fact that the largest operator in the Bakken, or one of the largest operators in the Bakken, is going to shut down completely, that physically that you're going to be able to flip the switch if indeed we do see a continued kind of strengthened demand from emerging markets, the U.S. and China. That's ultimately not going to put us in a situation where, fundamentals do matter. Right now they don't. Didn't answer your question. It was kind of a ramble, but when Aramco is telling you things like that, I think it reinforces the notion that we're worried about the current inventory situation, and we're worried about readily available spare capacity because demand is strong. And there's one thing that OPEC has been very good at over most of its history, is that they are very keen on and monitoring what demand looks like.
Buying the dip? Is that where we are?
Well, I think you have a lot of valuation protection here. Back when the first internet bubble burst, we had huge rotation into energy, which ultimately drove its proportion of the S&P up to 13%, which kind of peaked in 2013. It's less than 3 today. So, our 50 to 100 times earnings or EBITDA multiples in the go-go Mag 7, are those sustainable, and do they portend things that, like we're going to see an equivalent rotation that we saw back in 99, 2000, whenever that first big tech to energy and industrials rotation occurred? Don't know.
No, I don't know.
Not in a hurry to buy today, because I do think that there is still considerable risk, headline and narrative risk, between now and midterms.
Plus, I don't know if it's still the same, but it always felt like you needed 6 to 9 months of prices being in a certain spot for buyers and sellers to kind of realize, hey, it's not 70 and it's not, going to 45 or whatever. So I don't know that you could transact today if you wanted.
Reminds me of the meme with the stick, do something.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, real quick, you sat in the Landman conference room.
I did.
I did not. However, one of my artist friends has had 2 songs in Taylor Sheridan's biggest shows. One in Yellowstone. That song's called Get to Work Whiskey, my friend Ward Davis.
Nice.
And he had another song in Landman, which was Another Bad Apple.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
Let's upload those links to the podcast.
Yeah, Cody Jenks started his late August sessions podcast yesterday. I saw, and his first guest was Ward. It's kind of nerd out songwriter stuff, but it's a really cool piece. So go watch that, listen to it, listen to Ward. It's kind of an incredible background story of a kid from Arkansas and all the life experiences and difficulties he's had and what makes him a great songwriter and entertainer. But just a little plug for Ward there.
Love it, man.
No, that's
awesome.
really cool. That's really cool. Well, I was glad to be back this week. Thanks. Thank you guys for having me. This having a full-time job really sucks, but that being said, it's fun being out in the AI world these days. And man, answers to questions literally change every 2 weeks. Can it do this? Nah, I can't do that. Well, yep,
Yeah, it
now it
can.
can. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I'll put a plug in. I know Frac wrote a Frac slapped on the United Production Partners experience with the W-10 filing. That's real.
Yeah, no, that's real, true, documented stuff, and similar type numbers to another operator, when operating, that's using it kind of as we speak. And so, yeah, and there's a great article out, and I won't do it justice, but if you kind of think of the source of record today with existing software, so think Salesforce on CRM or even Excel with just your model, you've got a lot of information there, but so much of it's missing. And when you get in and you actually automate workflows like a W-10 and a G10 filing, the amount of data you capture and the approval processes, et cetera, the thought processes behind something, because you've automated that workflow, that source of record is way more powerful than what exists today. And so the potential for AI and AI native software to be $1 trillion type industry, I think is a real thing. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But same bat channel, same bat time next
Yes,
week.
sir. Great seeing you guys.
Yeah, I'll be in studio.
Stay warm.
Yeah, we'll have to upload. If we got to do an emergency episode, I'll go over to mom and dad's house where I know I'll have
Stay
power.
liquid, stay skeptical, and for the love of God, buy a generator.
I lived in DFW area back in the mid-late 90s, and one Christmas we were scheduled to travel with very small children. And I traveled for a living at that time, and we got the ice storm over DFW, and weren't able to travel. And I've never been happier to stay at home. But just be safe. Do you have a generator?
Not yet. But one rule I do have is if it does ice, I drive faster.
You're always welcome back in Houston.
Last DFW, I lived in Dallas for a year, 2000 to 2001, and literally lived in a loft apartment overlooking Woodall, Rogers, and 75. And it froze one night, and people were driving up 75 to get on Woodall, Rogers, and they'd make it about 2/3 of the way there and then just slide all the way back down. And the cars were piling up. And me and my ex-wife were sitting there watching it, drinking a bottle of wine, just going, how do you see this pile of cars and go, I'm the one that's going to make it? Particularly when you're in like a Pinto or an Escort,
Yeah, they blow up on demand.
And it was almost just almost like watching a pinball game. Ding, ding, ding.
Stay warm,
ding.
boys. We'll be
All
watching.
right, boys.
So miss y'all.